Annual Trans Equity Summit. My name is Quinn Villagomez, aka Shimmer, and my pronouns are she, her, female pronouns. So I know so many beautiful, amazing faces in the audience, but if you don't know who I am a radio honor personality with my great mentor and friend, and I love them so much, Roxanne Anderson. We have a show on KFAI. It is called Fresh Fruit and Red Productions. You can tune in every second Thursday of each month, and the focus of the program is as we speak to queer and trans artists of color in the worlds of performance, dance, poetry, everything. So it's just amazing. So tune in 7 to 8 every second Thursday of the month. Today I have the honor of being your MC. I want to name before we move any further that we are holding this event on stolen and occupied Dakota land and Anishinaabe territory, and in a society that was built on the genocide of Native people and the labor of enslaved Africans. Riva DeNova has volunteered to provide a blessing to open this space today, and I want you to welcome her to the stage. Riva, if you could come forward. She will be burning sage, and you're welcome to step out if you need to avoid the smoke. Please welcome Riva DeNova.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm going to thank you, Quinn, for that land acknowledgement. It really means so much to me and my community. I'm going to do a short blessing here for everybody here. I was supposed to do the blessing for the first Trans Equity Summit, but unfortunately I was really sick that day and couldn't make it. But it took me 6 years, but I'm here.
Riva, we'd like to honor you with this gift of tobacco from us on behalf of the Trans Equity Summit.
So now I'm going to do a short prayer. I'm going to burn a little sage, and I'm going to pray to the 4 directions. So if you would, take this moment to use your own spirituality if you wish, and if you are allergic to sage, it's just a little bit, so if you want to step out, you're more than welcome to. Start off with the direction east. Thank you. Have a great summit.
Thank you, Riva, for opening this space and for your presence here today. I want to also provide everyone some logistical notes about the day. There is a job and resource fair going on today from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the pavilion, just across the street in the sculpture garden, and I encourage you to stop by if all possible. There will also be a healing justice space from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the pavilion, and there's more information about that space in your programs that you each received today. If you need anything today, our volunteers are wearing purple lanyards, and lead staff, as well as anyone trained in psychological first aid, is wearing blue lanyards. Please do not hesitate to approach any of them with any questions. Can any volunteers and lead staff in the room stand up and wave so everyone can see you? So right at the very top, there's some of our volunteers today here at the Trans Equity Summit. There are gender neutral as well as gendered and ADA accessible bathrooms throughout the building that volunteers can direct you to, as well as a quiet room on the 9th level. There is a key for the quiet room. If you need that key, please ask a volunteer to assist you with that. If you need a free Metro Transit pass to get home today, there are a limited number of paper passes at the registration table. Please stop by during the day to grab one. Today's event is hosted by the City of Minneapolis in collaboration with a number of sponsors who are listed in your program, and many of whom have tables you can visit outside. I want to extend a big thank you to all of our sponsors, and a special thank you to the Women's Foundation of Minnesota for the sponsorship of our reception this evening. I want to thank Anna Min from Min Enterprises Photography for being our photographer for the day. If you do not want a photo taken, there are yellow lanyards at the registration table up at the very top in the lobby that you can wear to indicate that. We encourage you to share on social media about your day with the hashtag Trans Equity Summit. Now I want to welcome to the stage Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frye to welcome us to this event today. So please give a hand for Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frye.
We start by giving a huge round of applause to the amazing Shimmer down in front. Good morning. I am so proud to welcome you to what is now the 6th annual Trans Equity Summit. And as I'm looking out over this audience, I feel like it gets bigger every year. This has got to be not just a bigger room, but also a fuller one than just the one we had last year. I'd also like to give a huge thank you to the Division of Race and Equity for planning this event and giving me the opportunity to speak here today. Special thanks to the Planning Committee, Track Trachtenberg, our Trans Equity Project Coordinator. That's right. And members of the Trans Equity Council as well. If we could have the members of the Transgender Equity Council please stand or raise your hand so we can give them a huge round of applause. Your work has indeed been transformational. Now, I am really proud to be the mayor of a city that has been on the front end of numerous different social justice movements. And trans equity is just one of them. We've come a long way. Clearly, we have a long way to go. Minneapolis was the first city in the nation to pass a non-discrimination ordinance specifically protecting LGBTQ people in 1975. And since that 1975 ordinance, Minneapolis has continued its legacy of acceptance for transgender and gender non-conforming individuals. The Transgender Issues Workgroup was actually created, as you well know, by Council Vice President Andrea Jenkins. I'll be talking a little bit more about her in just a second, but she started it back when she was a council policy aide to address issues confronting the transgender community on a municipal policy level. And from that work group came several clear policy initiatives, including this Trans Equity Summit. The work group expanded to include and develop the Transgender Equity Council, which serves as an advisory board to the city and Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. And I've had the great honor and privilege of working with both Council Vice President Andrea Jenkins and Councilman Philippe Cunningham. To have two members of our Black trans community operating as council members, leaders in the trans community, leaders in the entire city of Minneapolis, it's been really a great honor for me, and I think it's of tremendous benefit to our entire city. So as you well know, 2019 marks the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Riots, a moment in which members of the transgender and gender nonconforming community moved from living their lives in secret to fighting for visibility and fighting for equity. And since then, we've made a lot of progress, and you have to acknowledge that we have a really long way to go still. I recognize that we still live in a country in which members of our trans community are restricted from serving in the military. 28 states, that's, by the way, a majority if you're good at math. 28 states lack anti-discrimination laws protecting LGBTQ people in the workplace. And violence against the transgender community specifically continues and persists. We know at least 19 transgender people have been killed this year. 19 lives have been taken from people who simply were being true to themselves and who they were. And so the theme of this summit is shifting the narrative. We want you to know that Minneapolis fully supports our transgender and gender nonconforming community members. And as mayor, I'm committed to making Minneapolis a city that fosters the livelihood of every single person that calls Minneapolis home. We pledge to continue doing the work to be a more inclusive city. We recognize that we still have a lot of work to do. We will continue the work by not only being supportive, but also learning. Knowing when to step back and to allow our transgender community to reclaim and center your voices and our minds. We will work alongside you to create spaces such as this one that value your leadership first. We want to envision a future in which no one's voice is silenced, but they are instead valued, listened to, and to go one step further, they are celebrated. There's a lot of work happening in Minneapolis that we're all extremely proud of, including the work of our Transgender Working Group and Transgender Equity Council. And so thank you just for your collective commitments to making our city better, not just for your community, but for all of our communities. Your voices makes a big difference in our city, and that is acknowledged today, and perhaps it should be acknowledged a whole lot more often. I want to especially thank the community artists, advocates, and leaders for their bravery, their passion and authenticity. Our city is a much better place because of your contributions. Now I get to talk about Andrea Jenkins. Council Vice President Andrea Jenkins is a writer, performance artist, a poet, and transgender activist. She's the first African-American openly trans woman to be elected to office in the United States of America. She has experience working in community development in North Minneapolis and in South Minneapolis, and delivering social services throughout. Council Vice President Andrea Jenkins moved to Minnesota to attend the University of Minnesota in 1979, 2 years before I was born, and was hired by Hennepin County government, where she worked for a decade. She worked as a staff member on the Minneapolis City Council for 12 years before beginning work as a curator of the Transgender Oral History Project at the University of Minnesota's Jean Nicholas Shredder Collection in Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Studies. I'm still going here. She holds a master's degree in community development from Southern New Hampshire University, an MFA in creative writing from Hamlin University, and a bachelor's degree in human services from Metropolitan State University. She is nationally and internationally recognized. A writer, an artist, a 2011 Bush Fellow to advance the work of transgender inclusion, and the recipient of numerous awards and fellowships. On a personal level, she has been so influential in my life. She's been courageous, she's been brave, and if you check out the work that she's doing right now for the people of the 8th Ward, it is incredible. By the way, recently opened the 38th Street Bridge. Is anybody familiar with it? I actually happen to think that it should be renamed Andrea Jenkins Bridge.
Do it!
If I go any further, I'm going to tear up as I do every single time I talk about this hero and great leader. Let me welcome up to the stage Council Vice President Andrea Jenkins.
Wow. Hello. Hello. Welcome to the 6th Annual Trans Equity Summit. 6 years. If I had not been leading this myself, I would not believe that the city of Minneapolis was the host and major sponsor of this event. But indeed, we are, right? I want to thank the mayor for being here today and for that amazing introduction. But first, I need to acknowledge that indeed we do stand on Dakota and Lakota land in a country that was built on stolen labor, and that all around us is a sea of oppression, right? So we need to have that context. But we are resilient, right? Yeah. 50 years ago, our ancestor, Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, ignited the Stonewall Riots. And the LGBT movement began in full swing. 5 years ago, I started the Transgender Oral History Project to document the lived experiences of trans and gender non-conforming folks, because we have to shift the narratives that others in our community to make sure that everyone's voices is lifted up. It's so beautiful. I mean, just seeing all of you in this space, many of you who were a part of that Transgender Oral History Project. So I just want to say thank you for sharing yourselves, sharing your lived experiences, sharing your life stories for that project. It was really amazing. We remember, right? We remember the 19 trans women of color who have been murdered thus far in 2019. And so I'm going to read their names. Dana Martin, 31, a Black trans woman. Jasleen Ware, a Black trans woman. Ashanti Carmon, 27-year-old Black transgender woman. Claire Legato, a 21-year-old Black trans woman. Mulasia Booker, a 23-year-old Black transgender woman. Michelle Tamika Washington, a 40-year-old Black transgender woman. Paris Cameron, a 20-year-old Black transgender woman. Chanel Lindsay, a 26-year-old Black transgender woman. Chanel Skurlock, 23-year-old Black transgender woman. Zoe Spears, a 23-year-old Black transgender woman. I knew Zoe. I met her in Washington, D.C. She lived at Casa Ruby. Brooklyn Lindsay, 32-year-old Black transgender woman. Denali Berry Stuckey, 29-year-old Black transgender woman. Kiki Fontroy, 21-year-old Black transgender woman. Jordan Kofer, 22 years old. Pebbles Ladine Dime Doe, a 24-year-old Black transgender woman. Tracy Single, a 22-year-old Black transgender woman. Bailey Reeves, a 17-year-old Black transgender teen. B. Love Slater, a 23-year-old woman in Lewiston, California. Jalela Jamar, a Black transgender woman. And additionally, we are deeply concerned about Joanna Medina and Laylene Polanco, whose stories we follow very closely. Medina died in the hospital in El Paso, Texas, just hours after being released from ICE custody. And so we speak their names. And we recognize and express gratitude to everyone who has helped to create this experience today. We want to thank our host, the Walker Arts Center, and its director, Mary Cerisi, and her wonderful staff for opening up this beautiful space. It's really gorgeous to see all of you in this iconic space in Minneapolis. Every time anything happens on television representing Minneapolis, they do a shot at the Walker Arts Center with the cherry and spoon. And so people all around the world know this location. I want to thank the Office of Race and Equity and of Race, Equity, and Trachtenberg for their leadership in bringing this together. I want to thank the Women's Foundation for their generous support. I want to thank Rare Productions and Roxanne Anderson and Anna Meyer for always stepping up. Thank you to the Trans Equity Council and all of the volunteers who are here today to help us put this event together. I want to thank all the elected officials who sent us messages of support, and I'll be sharing some of those videos and letters with you guys in just a little bit. I really want to give a shout out to my amazing staff, my senior policy aide, Diva Sadara. Diva, where are you? She outside working, probably. And my policy associate, Zoe Bougeret. Without them, like, none of this work would happen, trust me. So please give them a big round of applause. I really want to thank all of you for everything you do every day, for being here today, for showing up, for the courage to live your lives openly and out and really shifting how the world sees trans and gender nonconforming people. It's really important work to just get up and walk out of the door every day as your full self, and that matters. We see you, so thank you. So I want to get this going, but we also had some words of welcome from our Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, from our senators, Senator Tina Smith and Senator Amy Klobuchar. So I'm going to read the letter from Congresswoman Omar, and then we'll watch the videos of Senators Smith and Klobuchar. So Congresswoman Ilhan Omar says, "Dear friends, thank you for coming out today for the City of Minneapolis' 6th Annual Trans Equity Summit. For years, this summit has been a beacon of hope and solidarity for all of those fighting for justice for trans and gender non-conforming Minnesotans. I am grateful for your energy and your commitment to this important issue. For thousands of years, cultures all over the world understood that gender is not binary or an immutable quality. They knew that gender is unique to each and every individual on this planet. And that diversity is exactly what makes humanity so beautiful. Though we still have a long way to go, our society is finally beginning to move back to that understanding. Today, trans people are more visible than ever. At the same time, violence against trans people, especially trans women of color, happens at an alarming rate and is on the rise. Representation without broader acceptance means that trans people face new and different risks than in the past. You are not only fighting violence from anti-trans crusaders, but also tokenism from the people who claim to be your allies. While the far right legalizes discrimination against you, we will continue to fight for your protection under the law. When my colleagues push for tolerance but still misgender you, we will show them what acceptance and celebration looks like. We are done asking for a seat at the table. We want the best seats. So thank you again for being a part of the Trans Equity Summit. I am sorry I cannot be here in person, but know that I am with you in spirit, and I will continue to fight for you in Congress each and every day. Sincerely, Ilhan Omar, Member of Congress. And so with that, we'll watch a couple of videos from our senators, Senators Smith and Klobuchar, and I'm not sure who's queuing those up, but hopefully it will happen. All right, thank you.
And to discuss the work that we need to do to achieve equity. So first, I want to thank the City of Minneapolis for establishing the Transgender Equity Council in 2017 and for hosting this summit today. And I'm so proud to represent a city that is committed to having these important conversations and then taking action to make sure that all Minnesotans are respected, valued, and given the same opportunities. Now, let me be clear. It is unacceptable for any American to experience discrimination based on who they are or who they love. People should have the freedom to be who they are wherever they are. And we still know that there is still important work to do to protect and defend that right, especially in the workplace. In far too many states, you can be fired from your job for being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. In Minnesota, we're proud to offer protections against this discrimination. But if somebody who identifies as transgender wanted to take a job just across the border in Wisconsin, they could find themselves without the equal protection of the law. That is just wrong. Your fundamental rights should not depend on your zip code. A recent study by the Human Rights Campaign found that nearly half of LGBTQ+ employees are closeted at their workplaces. What's even more shocking is that this statistic has barely changed over the past decade. It's far past time for us to affirm LGBTQ+ rights in the workplace and in all public spaces, so that no person faces barriers to opportunity because of their identity. The Supreme Court recently announced that they would hear a case on this precise issue, whether the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. And while I expect that the Supreme Court will affirm that these protections are clearly within the scope of the existing law, we should not wait for the court to decide. The stakes are just too high. The House of Representatives has already passed the Equality Act, and the Senate should pass it too. This is the next step in our nation's journey to expand civil rights, and it's long overdue. The Equality Act would amend our federal civil rights laws to ensure that LGBTQ+ people receive protection against discrimination in employment, education, housing, and all public accommodations. For the first time in our nation's history, our LGBTQ+ family members, neighbors, and coworkers would be guaranteed all of the same federal protections as other protected classes. So I'm asking you all to join me in the fight to get the Equality Act across the finish line. I also want to mention how important it is to fight for fairness in housing and in healthcare. Recently, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development signaled that they will direct homeless shelter operators to assign rooms based on an individual's sex as assigned at birth instead of their stated gender identity. And we know that many folks who are transgender already forego shelter services due to feeling unsafe. But rather than working to make shelter services more accessible, the Trump administration is making it even harder for folks to find a safe place to sleep. When someone comes into a shelter, they should never be turned away because of their gender identity, or be forced to choose between sleeping on the street or being in a shelter room that makes them feel unsafe. That is a choice that no person living in this country should ever have to make. The Trump administration also moved to eliminate protections against discrimination in healthcare and wants to allow healthcare providers to refuse care based on a patient's identity. Now, I hear from Minnesotans who are transgender that they experience mistreatment and discrimination when they seek medical care, even with federal protections in place. So we need to do more to ensure that people are safe and respected when receiving health care, instead of rolling back fundamental civil rights and denying patients access to the care that they need. I will never stop defending the rights of people who are transgender and gender nonconforming. Thank you for dedicating yourself to the pursuit of equality and visibility, and know that I am your partner in Washington.
To everyone gathered at the 6th Annual Minneapolis Trans Equity Summit. I think you know I'd much rather be there with you in person, but there's just a few things going on right now, so I'm honored to join you via video. I'd like to, of course, thank Andrea and Philippe, who in 2017 became two of the first openly transgender people of color to ever be elected to public office in the United States of America. Okay, that's worth some applause. And of course, I also want to thank all of the people who support the Transgender Issues Workgroup and the Transgender Equity Council. Our home state of Minnesota has been called the land of 10,000 loves. So as we reflect on the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Riots, we honor the courage and activism of our transgender and non-conforming communities. Our state also celebrates that we held our first gay pride parade 3 years later after those riots in 1972. It was more of a protest than a celebration, and over the years, it changed. Today's theme, shifting the narrative, telling our stories, is fitting. It is through sharing your stories that we turn the page and make progress. Think about it. It wasn't too long ago that there were zero hate crime protections for LGBTQ people on the books. A little more than 15 years ago, in some states, you could be prosecuted for being gay. It wasn't too long ago that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was the law of the land. But today, there are more hate crime protections and more on-the-job protections. Oh, and there are more LGBTQ elected officials than ever before, including Andrea and Philippe, but also, of course, Angie Craig, who was elected last year and is the first openly gay member of Congress for Minnesota. She joined over 150 LGBTQ candidates across the country, more than any previous election. But as far as we've come, we still have many miles to go. As my friend and colleague and our neighbor, Senator Baldwin, likes to say, Full equality has not been won. We can't confuse progress for victory. That's why I am an original co-sponsor of the Equality Act. This bipartisan bill would ensure that LGBTQ people receive equal protection under the law by updating federal civil rights laws to ban discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, jury service, education, federal programs, and credit on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, age, or disability. Now, you know we were the first in Minnesota to do this, and that was a long time ago. It is time to get this done nationally. There's more we must do. We must also safeguard and strengthen the Affordable Care Act, including the protections for transition-related health care. And we must ban conversion therapy once and for all. We can start by passing the Therapeutic Fraud Prevention Act, a bill I've co-sponsored, which will help to put an end to harmful conversion therapy so that all LGBTQ youth in America are protected, no matter what state they call home. I'll end with this. There's an old saying, know where you stand and stand there, and let's be clear. I will stand with all of you. You know what we have right now. We have a president that literally has said that brave trans people should not be able to serve in the military. That is wrong. You are as patriotic as the person down the row or down the grocery aisle from you. We must make sure that we continue our journey toward full equality for every person. So keep up the good work and enjoy the rest of the event. You deserve it.
Thank you to all of our elected officials who have spoken today and are present today. Andrea, I just want to say I love you and I adore you and you're one of my idols. And lots of love you and you're one of my idols as well. Jacob Frye. Also, if you lost any items, any belongings, there is a lost and found table at the front up in the lobby. Now I want to introduce our opening plenary panel. This powerful crew of community leaders will discuss what it means to them to shift narratives in this work. Please welcome our panel for today.
Now listen, I got a couple bets I'm gonna have to fool. I got a couple things to say if I'm gonna be on the stage. I'm gonna do the work since I'm getting paid, and I will intellectually shake ass for y'all, but I got a few principles if I'm gonna do it, okay? One, I was just sitting there crying because y'all do realize we're saying like, oh, they're killing us. No. We are killing our black trans sisters. We are killing our black trans sisters. And I'm freaking tired of it. And you're lucky I'm editing myself with it. I'm tired. We are killing them. We asking every day for them to be the bravest, our emotional therapists, the sexiest, the baddest, collect the bag, collect the check, keep the home, bring home the bacon, cook for everybody. And like, I'm sick of it. They're not getting paid enough. We killing them. We are doing it. And then we're gonna say, oh, they killing us. Yes, we all experience transphobia. A lot of us experience racism. A lot of us experience just the fuckery that happens because of colonialism. But let's look at who's actually dying. And then another thing, I understand that like we got a lot of cool infiltrators here right now, and I come from a military backing, but I do not think it's cute that we're trying to get the right to kill people. That is not cute. That's not freaking cute. Now I understand that we should have a right, but like listen, some of the rights we're asking for, I will leave this stage if y'all think that liberation is the right to oppress others. I'm too radical, I'm too marginalized, and I'm too much of a whore for that, okay? So we gonna do this panel, but I'm gonna let y'all know, no, don't clap, pay a black trans woman. Do not clap, get your Venmos out. I'm tired of it, y'all, no, yes, stop clapping, pull out your phones.
And what's your Venmo?
No, where's your Venmo? No, I don't even have a Venmo. I don't even have a Venmo because of trauma. So don't pay me, take out your phones, stop clapping. If you don't have a black trans woman friend, look at you. You don't have one? That's interesting. But you be sharing Andrea Jenkins' photo, don't you? That's cute.
Okay.
Get your phone out.
Okay.
Pay somebody.
Yes.
Now we can be cute.
Now, church is in. Thank you. With that, I think we should maybe do introductions of who's on the panel, so we know who we talking to. Do you want to start it off?
You didn't pay me enough to start.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, how about if we start on the other end then?
Okay, thank you so much. Hello.
Move a little closer.
Hello.
Thank you.
Perfect, awesome. Thank you for starting us off like that. That is exactly what I wanted to say. Yeah. My name is Cameron PajYeeb. I use they and their pronouns. I reside, work, and play in St. Paul, but sometimes I come over to Minneapolis to play too. And I currently work for the Coalition of Asian American Leaders. Yeah, I guess I'll start with that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lenny Hayes. I identify as a two-spirit male. I do not use pronouns. And I own my own consulting business, Tate Topa Consulting. I do national work and have done local work in regards to two-spirit issues, in regards to violence, child welfare work, just a number of many things that I do nationally.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. That's really sad. Good morning. Good morning. Oh my God, you do better in a drag show. My name's Nick Metcalf. Indian name is Chandahi, which means yellow hawk. I teach at Metro State in undergrad social work, as well as, yeah, I know, Metro's great. I love them. If you ever go, it's incredible. Also, my day job is actually working at Hennepin County in Children and Family Services, and I'm a doctoral student over at the University of Minnesota.
Next. I just changed my name because I love drama. My name is Baki. I'm a trickster. I'm a shapeshifter. Give you a special elixir, but it's often gonna charge you because I like to make people's hips stir.
We don't have a lot of time on the panel, so I've been instructed to pare my questions down a bit. So I will do that for the sake of time. Since this focus of today is shifting the narrative, I'd like to start with each of you telling us, sharing with us, what activated you to do the work that you do? What was your activation point? If there's a specific or particular thing that happened or a memory that you might have that helped you motivate to do the work that you do now. Anybody can start.
Do you love how Daddy-O's fake and was like, I'm gonna pare down my questions, and then gave us this really hard question?
For me, what brought me to this work a lifetime ago was actually having lost my high school friend who had committed suicide, and continuing to work in the LGBT community for a long time and watching folks being discriminated against, oppressed, and figuring out ways to sort of, for me, to support them as they find their place in the world and giving them space to do that and help heal. One of the things I'm always amazed that, the amount of women of color who spend time doing sex work and living on the fringe of society because we have to make a living and feed ourselves and feed our families. And it's a privilege to come to these kinds of events. And one of the things I'm looking out in the crowd and I don't see many, and which is sort of stunning and overwhelming.
Wow. First of all, I want to acknowledge Nick. When I moved to the cities 22 years ago, he was actually one of the first individuals who I met within the Two-Spirit Native LGBTQ community, and have learned a lot from Nick in regards to community organizing, I am the former chair of the Minnesota Two-Spirit Society. But one of the reasons why I do the work that I do is because I am a survivor of many things. I'm a survivor of child sexual, mental, emotional abuse, and I'm also a survivor of the foster care system. And so hence why I do a lot of work in child welfare. But one of the things that what has prompted me to do so much national work is that even within our own tribal communities, our identity is not recognized. Even when we think of nationally, even the Two-Spirit identity is not recognized. We're not included in the mainstream language. In organizations we are, but nationally we're not. So I advocate a lot for the recognition of this identity. And one of the things that I tell people, and I think some people get really uncomfortable with me when I'm very straightforward about this, is the fact that if you really want to be inclusive to us, what does that mean to be inclusive? Inclusiveness does not mean just a label, but truly understanding that our identity is part of culture and spirituality. And one of the reasons why I don't use pronouns is the fact that I believe that pronouns is a form of colonization. Because I have talked specifically with elders within my own tribal community and other tribal communities, and the fact that we do have a word in our language that identifies male and female, but when you think about colonization, before colonization, our people treated all people with respect and honor. We don't even have the LGBTQ language before colonization. There's no such word in our tribal languages. So for instance, I come from the Dakota people, and the word that was given to me to identify who I am is Winkta. So I identify first as a Winkta. Second, I identify as a Two-Spirit male because that word didn't come about until 1990. And lastly, I identify as a gay male. This is my way of decolonizing my own way of thinking.
So I identify as among second generation, child refugee, trans, non-binary individual, and I don't think I'm an old soul, but I am still very young, according to many people. But I'm just starting with my activism. I'm only a few years in, and I think what really pushed me was not having enough spaces for my Asianness and my queerness and my transness. I know I was a part of the generation that where a lot of things started, a lot of entities started closing down. So all the allies in this room, make sure to donate to those places. I know Southside Cafe closed when I was coming out of college and moving back to the Twin Cities. And Shades of Yellow was closing down, and just having those spaces to find community, and having places and spaces to advocate for people who look like me and people who are impacted the most, which are Black, brown, trans people. And that's why I'm here, right? Is because I needed community. Yeah.
I'm gonna purposely take a long time.
Do it.
Okay,
Okay.
I do have one question left though.
Okay.
Okay,
I don't care.
okay, no.
I remember being in 6th grade, and the Black woman who was part of the love economy, who would walk me to the bus stop. I'd do my work for her. I remember being in 6th grade and thinking I was cute, and the girl who bullied me in English class, she would take a pencil, because she sat behind me, and she would stick it in the back of my neck and go, dyke, dyke, dyke. She later came out. I'm doing this work for her. I remember in 6th grade, I thought I was real cute because I pulled a shorty in 8th grade. Bad. Doing this work for her because she definitely fought she didn't finish high school, and I know part of it is because of the trauma when we, came out together, i.e. got caught in the bathroom, people fought her. And I was too much of a punk to fight, so she would fight for both of us and get, this was a time when like educators didn't understand that they could make money off of like caring about Black queerness. So they just would always, what is it called when they kick you out of school and you can't come back and you're like, fuck. Oh, no, not suspended, like, when they're like, expelled. She just got expelled after too many fights that weren't her fault, and I do it for her. And I wish I could say that I did it for the counselor, the white woman counselor that cried because she didn't know how to deal with me when I cussed her out. No, she's a byproduct, like, she gets help by me being me, but I don't do it for her. And I don't do it for the science teacher who was like, if you applied yourself, you'd be the best STEM major. I don't do it for him, even though he like should come out and never will. He's a byproduct. Me being who I am helps him by association. When I look back in my life and think really hard about the people who keep my crazy ass alive, it is Black femmes who do work that will never be validated under late stage capitalism. So yeah, that's who I do this for. Cause they the cutest anyway.
I love you so much. Okay, so here's, I think, maybe the final and deep question. How do we as trans, non-binary, two-spirit, gender non-conforming, gender nihilist begin to shift the narrative? If there were a trans manifesto or a tranifesto, as it were.
You're gay.
I know. Tell us something that you would want to ensure be part of that. That's my word, tranifesto. You heard it here first.
Well, when I think about that, one of the struggles and challenges of being a part of the Two-Spirit Native LGBTQ community is the fact that often people don't realize that we are a forgotten and underserved population. One of the things that I really struggle with is the fact that we do have Native trans women out in community, and I admire Miss Riva, as the work that she does in community, but also the fact that I have been approached by Native trans women, specifically one Native trans woman who was a part of a group. And one of the things that really upset her was the fact that she was 61 at the time and at a place where, because I've had many conversations with Two-Spirit people in community on therapeutic basis, as a friend, as a community member, but having that conversation that sometimes often they feel like they're being forced to do something. Meaning that this individual did not want to take hormones. And the people in community that she was with, in the non-Native community, got angry with her and stopped talking to her, unfriended her on Facebook. And I was really, really hurt by that. She identified as a native trans Two-Spirit woman. And she said, Lenny, I'm too old to transition. That's not what I want to do. I've just come to a place of acceptance of who I am. So one of the things that, and the reason why I do my work and why I speak nationally in all different areas is the fact that sometimes as Native people, we're forced to do things that we're not wanting to do. That's one of the reasons why I don't use pronouns. And one of the things I have just said is that I am not going to conform to the mainstream LGBTQ community because I am a Native person. I am a First Nation person. I honor my ancestors who came before me, who paved the work. And one of the things that I say, and going back to what I said earlier, is that if you want to be inclusive to our population, you need to truly understand that it's about culture and spirituality. It is not just a label. And sometimes I'm in places where I believe that people are uncomfortable with what I have to say, but I will speak truth because I am a survivor, and we have many Two-Spirit Native LGBTQ people out there who are being impacted by violence, all forms of violence, but yet we're not talking about them. One of the things that I'm also working on nationally in all the places that I go into is the fact that we never acknowledge the missing and murdered Two-Spirit people. When a little over 3-4 years ago, from my own tribe, we had 5 individuals from my tribe within a little over 2-year span were murdered or died by some form of violence. So why are we not acknowledging the Two-Spirit people? Thank you.
Before you go, as a college dropout but media culture studies major, I must say mainstream is IE for colonized, mainstream is IE for white supremacy, mainstream is IE for the patriarchy, mainstream is, what is it also? Cis-centric. That one's cute.
It's cute.
But that's just because I have an obsession with sissies, but that's no here nor there. Keep going.
Cameron, you want to go next?
Sure. So my entire life's work has always been around storytelling. I'm a graphic visual artist, produced 2 films, feature-length films, and released 2 feature-length films. I'm a photographer, graphic designer, anything but singing, really. But I would trade all my talents to be able to sing really well. But I karaoke well. That's a whole different story. But and I used to was a radio producer for 3 years. After with guidance from Rox and Shimmer, and so telling stories was always very important to me, because my identities, there aren't a lot of stories. I come from Hmong folks who have no land and were used by Americans, and our history or her story or their story, our stories were never written down, or they were burned or destroyed, and a lot of trans folks, right, our stories aren't there. And I wanted to create stories for people who looked and identified like me, and my entire life that's what I've been doing, but then realized I wasn't happy, right, even telling these stories. And what I've learned recently was I needed to tell stories not for the mainstream, right? I recently traveled back to my homeland and visited my parents' refugee camps, and their land and their home, and touched my grandma's mango tree that she grew 40 years ago. And it was but that didn't feel like home, right? And I was doing a documentary about my healing experience, my family's healing experience, and what that looked like for my communities, and realized that I was creating this not for me, I was creating it for other people. And that's when I realized that I can't speak for other people, I needed to tell my own story for me, because a lot of people, they would tell me you should make your documentary like this, or you should, these photographs should be looking like this, and you should talk like this, and da-da-da, right? That's in just life, and everyone tells you you should, right, how you should be, but and these rules, but genuinely, if you don't love yourself, and people tell you to love yourself all the time, but it wasn't until I had to go through it, right, that I finally realized damn, I need to start doing things for me. And yeah, I made this really badass documentary and did not take anyone's critiques into mind, and it was fucking beautiful. It's just for me. Yeah, actually, I had a premiere, but I didn't invite anyone. which was like beautiful. And like all the music and the audio was just me and my friends jamming out. And then I just scored it in because fuck it, you know. Yeah, and like storytelling, if obviously the people who are telling the stories should be the ones who are centered, the most impacted community should be the one centered. And stories should be told, written, filmed, visualized, organized by the people who the stories are about. And I don't know how, I mean, we all know this, right? We all know this. Just how do we practice it, and how do we also learning this, but like be generous to the folks who are still learning, right? So, yeah.
I would start as recognizing how divine we are, right? How powerful we are. And I am not looking for approval from institutions or anybody else, but from myself. And honoring what creation has made me as. And that's where I always think we're these manifesto, or what'd you say?
Tranifesto.
This tranifesto should begin. We are divine.
I love it. Okay.
Let me go. No.
I was gonna say, since you started us off, why don't you close us out?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. They didn't pay me this, and y'all don't deserve this. But people think I'm crazy, which I am, and I'm a weird hood hippie nigga. So I'm just getting comfortable because what I'm about to do takes a lot of energy, and I'm not the best for it. So it's gonna take. Okay, I'm a weird hood hippie nigga, but I've learned how to time travel, and you need each other to time travel, right? I'm just getting comfortable. Don't get weird about it. Okay, so we're gonna time travel together, and this is the thing. You need to go faster than the speed of light. But that didn't say anything about that just being in our neurons. So we're gonna have our neurons fire so fast, we are gonna talk to our transcestors as well as our trans babies in the future. But I'm a bad conduit because I'm a messy hoe. And like in order to do this, we all gotta love each other. And so shout out to the people in the audience who my ego got in the way of loving y'all. I'm very sorry. Can y'all please just take a breath with me? Only the people who I fucked over need to take a breath right now, okay? Thank you. That's why help me be a conduit for this time travel. I'm gonna need everyone to close their eyes. I'm gonna need everyone to thank their ancestors. And that's all of them. For my black people, even thank, but say fuck you to the masters in our bloodline. Okay? Now everyone, say thank you. I appreciate you. You died so that I could be here. You busted good nuts so I could be here. And that is powerful. That's magical. And I'm doing what I gotta do now for the babies in the future. Here goes this manifesto. Here's our time travel. Baby, you a conduit for change, for glory, for grace. Moths are often drawn to flames without understanding the oxygen, the nitrogen, the wood it takes to shine this bright. They don't understand the pain of burning. They don't understand renewal. Sometimes for growth, certain seeds have coating on them that have to evaporate. Translation, when you are doing you the best, sometimes people will cry because your light shines, their eyes begin to sting, and the seeds wrapped and coated and wrapped in shame, and them begin to flame and burst and combust. So when they flame and burst and combust in your face, do not consume any of it. Just give glory and grace and gratitude, because our ancestors, our elders in this room have let us know that you are divine, that your bloodline's divine, that your orgasms are divine. Baby, we are divine. Ashe.
Perfect.
Somebody owes me something because I'm tired now.
All right, I'm gonna invite folks who would like to stay as we continue this discussion, you're welcome to do so. I think Shimmer will carry us to the next piece of information. I want to thank all of you, Cameron, Lenny, my mentor, Nick, and Becky. Baki.
Say it 3 times. You scream it.
Baki.
Thank you.
Let's give our panel a big hand, everybody. For anyone who wants to hear more from our panelists, they will be leading a breakout session right after this, right here in the cinema. Our first round of breakout sessions will be from 11:30 until 12:30. Their descriptions and locations are in your programs, followed by lunch in the lobby where you registered this morning. Additional programs are available at the registration table, and volunteers are available to help direct you. We'll have a second round of breakout sessions after lunch. Again, descriptions and locations are in your program. And then we will gather back here at 2:45 to see a premiere of the Stonewall Oral History Project. And we'll hear from our keynote speaker, Mickey B. And then also just a reminder that we do have our job resource fair going on from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the pavilion, just across the street in the Sculpture Gardens. And then there's also a healing justice space from 11 a.m. until 5 p.m. in the pavilion, and there's more information about that in your programs. Again, I am Quinn Villagomez, or Shimmer, whichever you prefer. Have an amazing day at the 6th Annual Trans Equity Summit. Woo!